All right, thank you, Jason. You can see my screen okay at this point?
Yep, it's coming through perfectly.
Excellent. All right. So thanks everybody for joining. Today we're going to be talking about Agile data warehousing in the cloud. You can tell from my accent that I'm not originally from the US. I'm originally from New Zealand. If I mumble, blame it on my accent. Okay, so thank you everyone. Let's move ahead. Okay, so what we want to talk about is what does it look like to move to the cloud? What does data warehousing look like there, and how do we do it agile in a way that takes advantage of what the cloud offers, delighting our business users and being able to deliver faster, better, more robust, more flexible solutions. So it's an opportunity to do what we've already done, but do it better. So a lot of you will have already done data warehouse version 1.0. You know, you built your first warehouse, maybe even your second one. You're wanting to look at moving to the cloud for issues of flexibility, scalability, cost reduction, infrastructure cost reduction, and management reduction, all of those good reasons to do that. It's also an opportunity to say, is there a way to redo our data warehouse better than we've done it in the past? Okay, when we think about what does it mean to build out a data warehouse, particularly in an agile world, we tend to think of this life cycle. So you start with a concept. Somewhere somebody says, maybe it's driven by the business, driven by IT, we need a data warehouse. You come up with the concept of a data warehouse in whatever flavor that looks like. It might be your traditional ODS with Kimball data marts on top. It might be a very traditional corporate information factory, third normal form data warehouse with maybe data mart views. It could be a data vault, data lake, whatever that looks like. So you come up with your concept, you get your business case together, you start the project, and then you really get into the meat of the thing, which is, you know, you design your warehouse, you develop it, you test it, you deploy it, you push it into production to operate it, and eventually at some point at the end of its life cycle, you're going to retire it. So what we want to focus on for our purpose, we're going to take the concept, the kickstart, the retirement as given. We want to focus in on this section here. So when you do Agile, you get this very iterative approach. And so those of you who do Agile project management will understand about the concepts of sprints, and what you do is you're breaking your workloads into shorter time frames where you design, develop a subject area or a particular data warehouse item. You deploy that into your production environment, you operate that, and each sprint you're building new pieces. So you get this iterative approach to building out your warehouse. And what you want to do is you want to be able to have your sprints short enough to be agile and the content of what you deliver to be large enough to be worthwhile. And so people who are using automation, we'll talk about automation in a bit, are finding that they can get comfortably 2 to 3 week sprints, and they're building out fairly significant portions of their data warehouse. So if we talk about automation, why should we automate? So one of the big problems that everybody's dealt with in data warehousing is that there's a lot of very repetitive tasks that consume a lot of human resource time. So there's a lot of coding, there's a lot of database creation and things like that, which consume a lot of human time but don't add a lot of value to the data warehouse project. So you have humans, you want humans to talk to other humans. So your smart data warehouse people have to talk to users, get requirements, talk to source system people, understand what data is available, come up with models, come up with business rules. What you don't want is those humans to have to then go off and spend days or weeks writing code. It's a bad use of a smart human. And so the way to get around that is you use automation tools, and there are a bunch of them out there on the market, of which WhereScape happens to be one. What that gives you is your projects go a lot faster. You've got a software which automates the the mechanics of building, and so you're building things a lot faster. Because it's automation gives you standardization, you get a much lower risk and lower cost. So less people involved means less cost. Standardized approach means shorter risk. It also means you get through things an awful lot faster. You get much more work done. This can only mean much happier customers because they are getting analytics on their desktop a lot faster than they would otherwise. So we talk about, when we talk about automation, we talk about the 5 Ds of automation. So there is design automation, development automation, documentation automation, deployment automation, and then daily operations. So let's take a look at some of these individually. So design automation and design. Now, when you're doing Agile, it's very important that you involve your users at every step of the process. They have intimate knowledge of their requirements. They often have intimate knowledge of the data and the data issues, so data quality issues. They are also going to become your champions if you can get them on side. And so you want to involve your users in a collaborative effort. So involve your users frequently. Use real data. So when you're doing development, if you've got access to production data, use production data to help drive your design. And so that allows you to model better. It allows you to understand requirements better. It also means if you can't actually deliver what the user wants, you're going to find that out much quicker because the data won't be available there to support it. So find that out in week 1, not month 6. The other thing is with Agile is brainstorm the design. Work with your users to brainstorm the design. Don't let the perfect be the enemy. Perfect becomes the enemy of the good. Get something that is close enough. You can refine it later. If you worry about getting the perfect design, you won't actually start development, and so your projects lag a long time in the process. And so there's going to be a lot of iteration between design, development, and test. At WhereScape, we call that prototype, iterate, done. And automation tools allow you to do that because you can build things fairly rapidly. Okay, let's look at development. So development automation. Again, keep your users involved. Use metadata. So by that we mean every time you discover something about the source system and what's in a particular attribute and its usage and data quality issues, make sure you have a place to capture that. Use the metadata to also drive your development. Creating objects, using automation and the metadata to do that. Generating your processing scripts, whether that is a stored procedure or code blocks, depending on your target cloud platform. How do you process? Use automation to help you with that and the metadata. This gives you really high-speed iterations. So if your Agile processes got sprints longer than about 3 weeks, you would not really call it Agile. It would be Agile like a sumo wrestler. You want 2 to 3 weeks. My personal preference is a 2-week plus a 1-week sort of breathe in, breathe out week. I have a lot of clients who do very successful 2-week iterations. And in those iterations, you don't want to say that sprint, I'm not just building a table. I'm actually building a subject area, a stream of processing. The content of that sprint has to be significant. Otherwise, your development is too slow. You want to aim for no hand coding. If you are hand coding, it is not repeatable. You're relying on the person who wrote that code to maintain it. Even if they write good documentation, that documentation is stale at the moment they wrote it. So you want to be able to have generated code everywhere you can. Anything that is pattern-based, that is repeatable, should be automatable. And so you want to have the software do the repetition so that human beings are not having to repeat stuff, because when humans repeat stuff, we tend to make mistakes. The other thing is documentation. If you've got metadata underpinning it all, you should be able to automatically generate documentation about lineage, about impact analysis, about data dictionaries, about business transforms and business logic. All of this should be able to be automatically generated, and that allows you to not only build the first time correctly, it allows you to manage and make changes into the future significantly easier. You're not relying on the one smart guy who wrote or girl who wrote the original piece. Anybody else can pick it up because of the metadata and because of the documentation. Okay, let's talk about testing. So, what does automated testing look like in the data warehouse, and how do we make use of that in the cloud? So, traditionally in a data warehouse process, the testing is the weakest part of the process. It's usually done ad hoc. It's done with random data sets, and it becomes difficult to do regression testing and things like that. People end up spending a huge amount of time and effort tracing down random errors that have crept in from one iteration to another. And so automated testing is where you guys want to be heading towards. So you want to make testing something that is just part of your process. It just becomes continuous. I do a new piece of development. I then push this into a test environment. I run the test against a known set of data, and I know that this works, and also that I haven't broken anybody else's work. So if you're using automation tools, the metadata helps you automate the testing. And so in the cloud, the thing that you get is elastic computing. Spin up a new environment. You know, I don't have to go and find a new server and a new database. The cloud just says, give me a new environment, spin that up automatically, run my test, use elastic compute. So let's say I want to do a volume test, give me a large quantity of compute power for the next 30 minutes while I push through, 100 million records. My testing is complete. I know that everything works. I can scale back down to my regular level of compute power. Okay, let's talk about deployments. Now, part of the issue, so you might have developed your data warehouse. You think you've done a very good job. You then want to push it into a test, a QA, a production environment. And if you are doing this manually, even if you are using some of the standard tools like TFS, you've got to remember, what have I checked in, what have I checked out? It tends to lead to mistakes. You miss items to deploy, you forget a stored procedure, you forget an index, you forget a lot of the ancillary things that go with your data warehouse development. And so you get mistakes. And in an enterprise world, you don't want to be constantly redeploying into production to cover your deployment mistakes. So automated deployment is where you want to get to. Something where you can say, this is what I have worked on, everything I have touched, it is packaged, it's ready to deploy. I can deploy that either command line or through a wizard. It deploys in a way that doesn't break existing processing, etc. We also got to capture good metadata about deployment. This is important for governance. How did this table get into production? This stored procedure. How did it get there? Who put it there? When did it come in, and why? So all of that should be captured as part of your deployment. And again, that should be all done automatically. And so you want to also be able to auto refresh your documentation. My documentation in development is going to look very different to my documentation that I've prepared for production. So as I do a new deployment into production, I want to say refresh production documentation. That's going to help governance, it's going to help future change management, it's going to help my operators, and it's going to help my users, so that what they know is in production is the documentation is fresh. Also, it gives you options around things like rollbacks and redeploy versus redeploy. If I deploy something into production, an unexpected situation happens. We don't like it when it happens, but we all know it does happen occasionally. How do I fix it? Do I roll it back? Do I redeploy with a change? using automation gives you a lot more ability to do that in an automated way. Okay, let us talk about operating. So what does this look like to run it? I'll say daily operations, but we all know that modern warehouses have not just overnight refreshes, they have intraday refreshes, even up to the point of having some data being real-time populated into warehouses. So your operators are stakeholders as well. So rather than treating them like the poor cousin, you should involve your operators early in the process. You want them to be able to build operating manuals. As you build, you want them to understand the process. So get them involved early in the development cycle. You want to make sure that as you build, it connects with whatever operation management tools they have. And so make their lives easier. They will be the people who have to deal with first line support, with user queries, with production failures or issues. So work with them and make their life easy. Now in the cloud, their world is a lot simpler. A lot of the cloud technology deals with management of workload, backups, indexing, statistics and things like that. So they do have a lot less to be concerned about in the cloud, so that does make the job easier. And so you might want to consider that as one option of why to move to the cloud. Security is also something that's often managed better in the cloud. They don't have to worry about that quite so much. Now, continuous integration. What does it look like for me to build something in dev, push it into a continuous integration testing? If it passes continuous integration testing, being able to push that into a production environment. Using automation, that's something you can work towards, something you want to work with your operators on as well. Now, the cloud also gives you elastic computing, so use it to do things which you can't do with an on-premise server. If you have a fault, if you have a production failure, scale up to figure this out. Spin up a new environment to test some scenarios, use some different data to see if you can find out what's going on. So the idea of the cloud giving you this infinite scalability, the ability to create new environments is a feature that's well worth considering for cloud computing. So Agile data warehousing in the cloud really is best done using automation. You get all the advantages of using the cloud, getting projects done significantly quicker. And what our clients are telling us is that on average, over long periods of time, they are finding that using automation is basically giving them about a 4 to 5 times productivity improvement. So this is not just one project, wow, we did this in 1 month instead of 5. What they're saying is that over the life of their warehouse, in some cases we've got one customer who's documented this over 15 years, is that they are saying that their the project resource requirements and project delivery times is 80% lighter than it would have been otherwise. So you should definitely, if you're not using automation, you should definitely look into it. As I say, there are several tools out there that do data warehouse automation, of which we are one. So well worth the investigation. I'm going to talk a little bit more WhereScape specific stuff from this point, but the principles are the same for other automation tools and also for Agile. So if we look at the conventional way of building out a data warehouse, we call this slide internally at WhereScape, we colloquially call this the staircase of doom. And the reason we call it the staircase of doom is that projects that take this approach to building warehouses typically run into problems, typically run over time and over budget, and often end up with a very contentious relationship between IT and your business users. And so if you look at the ladder, and as you start to climb up the ladder, You start at the bottom here, you gather requirements, and then after you've got your requirements, you put together a framework of how you're going to build your warehouse, and then you profile your data, you build some model, then you build the physical layer, you come up with the database architecture, you come up with storage management and indexes, you design OLAP if you're going to use OLAP, you build your ETL, you put all your version control in there, you build your workflow, you deploy it up to test for UAT, and you put it in front of a user, and a user says, oh, that's not quite what I wanted. And then you have a big argument about, well, you gave me bad requirements, and they say, no, you misinterpreted my requirements and such. Why is that a problem? Well, it's a problem because if I have to make a change, I have to go all the way back down the staircase and make changes. I have to go back and update my requirements document, update my framework, update my models, update my physical layer, update my ETL layer, rerun my data, put it back in front of my users. Now, if you look on the left-hand side of the staircase, you're going to see a whole bunch of different tools that are often regarded as best in breed for each step. And so, if I've got a lot of Microsoft examples here, your requirements, you often gather them in Microsoft Word. You might profile the data, using handwritten SQL, or maybe integration services profiler. You might model using ER Studio, perhaps. You build it, your physical layer using Management Studio. You use analysis services for your OLAP design. Your ETL layer could be tools like DataStage or Informatica, maybe integration services. You're going to use Git or TFS for version control. You've got all these different tools, and every time I climb a step, I switch a tool. And every time I switch a tool, I'm switching skills. I may be switching people. And so the handoff between the tools is not really as good as we would like. So if I'm having to climb the ladder, switching tools, switching people, and I get up here and I have to make a change, as I come back down, switching tools, switching people, the emails get exchanged, every email takes a day to answer. The governance, firstly, the governance is a problem. Secondly, the delay in making changes is very, very hard. So what we end up doing is we end up beating on our business users to say, give me perfect requirements. Because once I start once I start physically building my warehouse, the cost of change is very, very high. And now the problem is when you say to your users, give me perfect requirements, this is analytics, this is data warehousing. Your users don't know what their requirements are. They can tell you the first question they want answered, but they know out of that first answer, 6 new questions are going to arise, but they don't know what those questions are. And so what they say is, well, I can't give you good requirements because I don't know. You say to them, well, if you don't give me requirements, I can't build it. And they'll say to you something like, okay, give me everything. And you say, well, you can't have everything. And you end up in this big negotiation. You eventually come out with a requirements document, and neither side is particularly happy. And even though you've got the requirements document, you still, by the time you get up to here and you're putting stuff in front of a user, you know that changes are going to get made. So how do we take away the pain of change management during the development cycle? How are we able to be agile? Because if you look at this staircase is not agile. Now, it's what we were all trained to do when we went to college to learn how to build a data warehouse, but it's not agile because the handoff is too cumbersome, too inefficient, too overcomplicated. So in the WhereScape world, what we try to do is we put all of those steps into one tool. And this is what data warehouse automation tools do, is they have all of the tools within one framework. They have metadata underneath driving it all together. You have all of the best practices built in. And so as you climb the ladder, you're working with your users, you get up here and you put something in front of a user and a user says, that's not quite right. And you say to the user, okay, what do you think is right? And they might make a suggestion. And so you drag and drop to change the logic, and then you say, recreate the table, regenerate the code to populate it, update the documentation, redeploy it into my test environment, rerun the data, and it's back in front of the business user in about the same time, almost, I'm exaggerating, in about the same time as I've just described it. But the point is the automation tools capture all of that within one tool, and all of those steps get automatically updated as you make changes with your users. So the automation gives you, because it's all in one place, it gives you very tight governance and therefore very good documentation. It gives you full lifecycle management so that over the life of a warehouse, all of those changes are captured, they're recorded, you know who's made what change when. The handoff between people is so much easier. So if you have a consultant to build the first version and then your own people are required to maintain it, the knowledge sharing is easy and very straightforward. Okay, what about if I have already got a data warehouse? I've got data warehouse version 1.0 sitting on-premise in, let's pick a database, let's say it's on SQL Server, and I would like to move this into the cloud. I'd like to do version 2.0 of my warehouse. I'd like to move it into the cloud. What does this look like? So depending on which cloud target you choose and which source your legacy data warehouse is built on, this might be straightforward or it might be a very ugly process. And so automation can also help you with migration. So there's many things you have to migrate. You have to migrate the physical structure of your tables, and that may require data type changes. Maybe your cloud platform has different data types to your legacy platform, so you're going to have to deal with data type changes and DDL differences. Then you're going to have to move the physical data. Now, if you've got a small to medium-sized legacy warehouse, doing this might not be a big headache. If you have a large mature warehouse, this may be a major headache. Trying to move billion-row fact tables, you don't do this as one transaction. You might have to work out how to batch this into bite-sized chunks to move that into the cloud. So automation is going to help you with that. So we're moving data, moving structures, we're moving data. The next thing you have to consider is your user structures. So in your legacy platform, you might be using Windows Active Directory groups, or you might be using database roles and things like that for user security. You've got to migrate that to the cloud. So you'd like to be able to automatically retain those structures if you can, or convert them to the equivalent in the cloud platform. What else do you have to worry about? Your data pipelines. So how I populate my existing on-premise warehouse may not be possible to use in the cloud. So if my legacy platform is, for example, maybe an Oracle data warehouse, and I have used PL SQL stored procedures to populate my data, I want to move to something like an Azure DW, a cloud platform, or maybe I want to look at maybe one of the newer databases like a Snowflake. I can't use my PL SQL stored procedures. I have to create the equivalent in the target. So how do I take that logic and all of that development and move that across into the cloud? That's not as straightforward, particularly if it's handwritten code you've got, but there are ways to semi-automatically to move chunks of that across to the new data platforms. So automation can help you with migration as well. Okay, what can we do? WhereScape automation lets you manage both on-premise and the cloud. So sometimes people have a hybrid world. Maybe there's certain data that we cannot put in the cloud for political or policy reasons. Maybe we're not going to put health data or maybe HR data or something like that. We're not going to put that in the cloud. That has to stay on-premise. Maybe there's commercially sensitive. One of our customers is a large manufacturer, and their IP, manufacturing IP, has to be retained on secure networks because of concerns of theft. And so that, all of their manufacturing test data has to stay on-premise, but all of their financial data can be run on a cloud. And so they have a hybrid world. And so how do we move data between one and the other, and how do we keep the cloud in sync with what we're building on the ground, etc. And so So WhereScape will help you build and manage that, and also eases the transition from the cloud to from the ground to the cloud. A lot of people say to me, how do I make the decision whether to consider using the cloud or should I keep it on premise? One concept you might want to think about, and it's just one of the factors to consider, is what they call data center of gravity. Is my data sources, are they in the cloud or are they on premise? Where is the center of gravity of my data? Is it closer to the ground or closer to the cloud? And so you might make the decision based on, if the center of gravity is closer to the cloud, maybe my warehouse should be on the cloud. If the center of gravity is closer to the ground, maybe I should keep it on-prem. So that's one of the things to think about. Okay, let's look at a final slide for the WhereScape piece here. So what does WhereScape automation give you for cloud? It gives you fast-track delivery, so you actually get stuff built much, much faster. You're going to get much lower risk because it's built standardized. It's built using industry best practice. You're going to do all of your discovery as you build. So if you're going to fail fast. And so your project is less likely to run over time, and it's less likely to be a failure. Lower cost to get started. You're not going to need large project teams, armies of developers. You're going to need fewer people who are able to do smart work and let the software do the mechanical work. You get an awful lot done. We have several legend stories within WhereScape of small teams replacing large teams, typically teams of 6 to 8 people replacing teams of 60 to 80 people. Some of those stories are very legendary. Also, the support for DevOps, what we talked about continuous testing, continuous deployments, and being agile, being able to make changes in a very agile manner, and also migration. How might we get an existing warehouse into the cloud? So that is everything that I was going to cover today. I've gone through a little quicker than I expected, but it does give us time for questions. I would point out that, as Jason mentioned, SQL Pass is in a couple of weeks' time. WhereScape will be there. We would love to see you. We have a presentation there on the 7th of November at 1:30 about automated development of streaming pipelines. So where we talked about the refresh being daily refresh or intraday, streaming being real time. People might want to come and have a look at what automation in the streaming world looks like. But otherwise, yes, any questions, you've got my email address there, or we can deal with them now. Jason, how do you like to do questions here?
Yeah, so sorry, I was just unmuting myself there. So afternoon, everyone, so at the moment we don't have any questions in the queue, but if anyone does have any questions regarding Agile data warehouse design, do feel free to put them in now. We'll give that another minute or so to go. And you guys have you mentioned you guys are having a booth at the PASS Summit here in a couple weeks?
Correct, yeah.
All right, while we wait for a question to come in, you guys got anything exciting going on at the booth?
Monique, do we have our magician? We have a magician at our booth this time.
I believe so. Not sure. I actually think that the session on streaming data automation probably is our most exciting aspect there at PASS. And we also do on our, if anyone is curious on another take on data warehouse automation, we actually did a webcast that's on our Vimeo channel as well about a month ago. That's a preview of what we'll be doing at PASS as well. So I direct you to that. It was specifically for the PASS Marathon.
Right, and the other thing that people will find exciting is automation in the data vault world. So there's some very exciting stuff happening there, And so those of you who are considering a data vault model for your data warehouse should definitely come and talk to us about that, because it's a style of...
On Tuesday, next Tuesday, October, I think 30th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, we actually will have Dan Lindstedt, who is the Data Vault 2.0 inventor, will be doing a webcast with WhereScape as well, talking about how successful IT teams tackle the Data Vault model. So you can visit our website for information on that as well.
That's great. And the so far the only question that's come in is asking about. Actually, we just had a couple come in. Will the slides be available after the fact? And so, Michael, if I can get a copy of those, I can get those posted with the session content.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. And is WhereScape available in cloud environments, or you integrate with virtual machines?
Yes, yeah. So it will work natively in the cloud. If you want to have everything running in the cloud, yeah, you can spin up a virtual machine, install the software there, and it will run quite happily.
Great. And not sure if you'll have an answer for this one, but from an Agile data warehouse in the cloud perspective, is with the aspect of bringing reporting services in for consuming data, do you guys have an aspect of that WhereScape can assist with?
Yeah, so we stop at the end of the database. So we will build out your tables, your views, we'll populate all of that. We have taken an agnostic approach to reporting tools, and the reason for that is that by the time people consider automation, they've already taken their first stab at some form of reporting. So the evolution of reporting is, you will have typically tried reporting services, Power BI. You may have already looked at other tools like a Tableau or a Yellowfin or Cognos or something like that. And so by the time you call us, you've already made a tool choice, and we don't want to be prescriptive with that. So we've chosen to stop at the end of the database. So yeah, you would connect your reporting services or Power BI to the cloud database that we would have built and populated for you.
Okay. Yeah, and I think the question, I'm not sure if you're the right person for the question that's coming in here regarding SSRS consumption, but I think so. Bill Water had asked a question about this, and that's kind of what I'm kind of getting around. And I think the best bet for this question about consuming reporting services and reporting data when it comes to SSRS being dropped as a service in Azure is probably looking at some of the new 2017 circa Power BI changes is probably
yeah. So I'm probably not the right guy to answer that.
Right.
Yeah.
And got a question here of does WhereScape replace Git as far as the processing goes?
So yeah, everything that you would build within WhereScape, we manage all of the versioning and check-in, check-out version history within our metadata repository. So you wouldn't need to use Git. Now, having said that, we have some new stuff coming up next year around DevOps, where we're going to integrate better with some of the standard industry tools. So if people say enterprise-wide we use Git, could WhereScape interface with that? We will do that. But if you don't have that, then the WhereScape version history and source code control is very rich and very powerful.
Great. All right, so that's all of the questions that we have for today. Thank you, Michael and Monique, for joining us here today. Thank you, everyone who came to attend the presentation. And if anyone is looking to present in the future, we are still always looking for more presenters, trying to have at least a presentation every other week. We will, of course, not be meeting the week of the past summit, so look forward to meeting with everyone again shortly after the summit. With that, everyone have a great day. And goodbye, Michael, and goodbye, Monique. I'm going to end the call now.
Thank you, Jason.